Welcome to the Hardwood Hawgs Podcast. I'm your host, Mason Choate, joined by Jackson Collier. This is your favorite Razorback basketball podcast. Last episode of the regular season, as Arkansas has one game left. Kentucky on Saturday, 1 p.m. Central Time, Bud Walton Arena. Should be a great crowd for a big game with a lot of implications as far as postseason goes for both teams. Both teams coming off of losses to Tennessee teams. So Arkansas lost to Tennessee on Tuesday night. It was just I feel good about saying it was Arkansas's worst performance of the season. And then of course Kentucky lost to Vanderbilt on Wednesday. Interesting loss. They're dealing with some injuries. Arkansas, you have the injury to Brazil, but everybody seems to be fine. You just got to figure out, I guess it's a matchup thing. Like I don't know, Jackson. What is it that you're seeing from Arkansas, especially like specifically in that Tennessee game where Arkansas, they lost by 18 points, 75-57. But I even wrote in my story, like it felt like way more than that. Like it just felt like Arkansas just got blown out of the water, which they did. But the 18 points, 18 points is a lot of points, but it just felt like more than that. It was just, they didn't have a chance, Jackson.
No, I think the most disheartening thing about it was, it just seemed like there was a complete lack of effort for extended periods of time. 50-50 balls went in Tennessee's way pretty much every time. And that's all effort. Rebounding was pretty atrocious, especially in the first half. The final tally on total rebounds wasn't that far off. There wasn't that big of a disparity, but in the first half, Arkansas allowed, I think, 8 or 9 offensive rebounds in the first half, a lot of second chance points. Arkansas didn't shoot the ball well at all, especially from the free throw line, 59% from the free throw line. They haven't been a good free throw shooting team all year. They're like 69.2% on the season, but it's a complete lack of focus when you're a Division I college basketball player and you're just not making free throws. It's more focused than everything, because it should be, by that point in your career, kind of muscle memory. You get your routine down, it's the same shot every time, and it is what it is. So the free throw issues are concerning. The lack of effort was concerning. The rebounding issues were concerning. You're going to have games where you run into a really good defensive team, and Tennessee is a really good defensive team. So you're not going to be able to, score as high of a level as, they've been able to. They scored a lot against Florida, against Georgia, against Alabama, and Nick Smith back in the lineup, and the offense was playing really well. But Tennessee is one of the best defensive teams in the country, and you can't really squander opportunities to score at the free throw line. You can't squander opportunities to finish under the rim, and you can't be gifting them extra possessions. And, those extra possessions come down to effort, and Arkansas just didn't have the effort, which that was the most disappointing part to me, I think. There just wasn't that energy, that enthusiasm, that effort, or anything like that. It was almost like right out of the gate, they just knew they were going to lose almost.
Yeah, I think it was the first time all season that not a single player had at least 14 points in a game for Arkansas. They were dominated in the paint all night, which is something I want to ask you about is the lack of physicality in the paint. That was a big thing that Eric Musselman said. He said we got out physical. And when he said it, I was like, where have I heard this before? Like, I feel like I've heard somebody say this recently. It was Sam Pittman after the Missouri game, the season finale at Missouri. And then, of course, the next day they fired their strength and conditioning coach, Jamil Walker. So it's not good to hear that they got out physical. You mentioned Tennessee, number 1 team in defensive efficiency. So, like, that, it's a good defensive team. But like you said, you squander opportunities to score at the free throw line. You're missing layups. And then you're just gifting Tennessee buckets in the paint all night long. Ricky Council kind of said, like, Council had 3 fouls by, like, the 3-minute mark in the first half. And he said that, because him specifically and the team in general, was getting in foul trouble, it caused them to defend differently and maybe not play as aggressive. But is it concerning to you that they just got dominated in the paint? Guys like the Mitchell twins. Jalen Graham, we kind of understand with him. He's not going to be a physical presence down low, specifically defensively. But for the guys, for like the Mitchell twins, who we've talked about a lot on this podcast, as guys that we like to watch play basketball. Mikal Mitchell, he's a good defender. Makai Mitchell, a good defender, but they didn't show that against Tennessee. All that said, is that concerning for you moving forward that Arkansas was dominated in the paint by Tennessee? Do you think other teams are going to take advantage of that moving forward?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when you look at, the Kentucky matchup this weekend. They got Oscar Sheboy. He's going to be physical. He might not be 7 foot, but he's a physical impending post presence. And I definitely think there's a big concern. The Mitchell twins, the Alabama and Tennessee games back to back have kind of been two of their worst performances as Razorbacks, which is unfortunate because this is the time of the year where you're hoping everybody is hitting their stride and playing at their best basketball. Just hasn't been the case for them. You knew something was going on with the front court rotation against Tennessee when we saw Kamani Johnson get 12 minutes. He hadn't come off the bench in feels like weeks. And it was just they were getting so out physicaled down low that Musselman tried to go to his enforcer with Kamani Johnson. He grabbed a couple rebounds, but I mean, it was another thing where, he didn't really do all that much either. So we're kind of back to square one from the beginning of the year, kind of right after Brazil's injury, kind of searching for who's going to take control of that front court spot. I think it's up for grabs now again, after getting out physical. It's one of those things, and I understand Ricky's point about, well, we were in foul trouble, so we had to defend differently. I do understand that, but at the same time, a lot of the foul calls that Arkansas picked up, especially in the first half, were just dumb plays. They were fouling far away from the basket. They were being overly aggressive, playing with their hands, or they were just, kind of going for steals they didn't need to, or it was a lot of just mistakes that they didn't need to make that they could have kept playing physical defense without fouling. I think there were at least 3 or 4 instances there where they kind of hurt themselves in the foul count. And that changes the complexion of the game too. But I mean, that's something we've talked about all year too. You got to be able to defend without fouling. And there's been this ongoing thing about, refs in Arkansas and all this sort of stuff. And you got to be smarter with how you defend. There is a point where you can be aggressive and physical and not foul, and you got to understand how refs perceive defense. Like, you can actually legitimately not touch someone, but by the vantage point of the ref on the floor, it's going to look like it, or they'll make anticipation fouls. That's all stuff as a basketball player that you got to account for and how you defend.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole blaming the refs thing, that I don't think that had a factor in the Tennessee game. Arkansas outscored by 24 in the paint. Like, that's just how it went. Eric Musselman did make the point. Like, Arkansas did not get dominated on the boards really, especially statistically. I think they were pretty even as far as rebounds go. Let's see. Yeah, Tennessee only had 30 or 3 more rebounds than Arkansas in the game. Like, it wasn't. I think they only had 1 more offensive rebound. So it's not like Arkansas was getting dominated on the boards. It was just, if you watch the game, Tennessee was just blowing by the guards, and the big guys down low were just letting them get into the paint and take a shot. And I don't know. I mean, I can see from Ricky's perspective, it seemed like Arkansas wasn't trying to contest shots as much in the paint, and I mean, Tennessee just took them, and that's how it went. And Arkansas lost the game. So now you look at it, you're 8-9 in conference play. You're 19-11 on the year. There's a lot of stuff we got to get to, but I want to ask you, Jackson, because you're our bracketology guy, and like, where do you see Arkansas right now? I've had people in my DM saying, like, does Arkansas make the tournament? I have my dad texting me, are the Hogs going to make the tournament? And I keep saying, like, yes, I think that Arkansas is still a potential Sweet 16 team. Like, even I think they could go even further than that if they're playing at their full potential. Like, after the Alabama game, people were talking to me. They're like, man, this team kind of, they keep losing or they're not that good. And I would tell them, like, did you not watch that game against Alabama? Like, they looked really good. The way that they fought back was very encouraging as far as, like, if Arkansas can fight back on the road against number 2 Alabama. I mean, they can do that on a neutral court against any team in the country. That's how I felt. And then they go and lose this game to Tennessee, and then people are in my DMs like, is this team going to make the tournament? So I turn to you, Mr. Collier, JC Hoops. By the way, side note, and I hate when I do this where I talk a lot and I'm trying to ask you a question and whatever. Uh, I was talking to somebody the other day and they were like, who do you work with? And I said Jackson Collier, and they're like, I don't know who that is. And I was like, JC Hoops, and they were like, oh yeah, I know that guy. So I guess I just need to say JC Hoops from now on. Uh, JC Hoops, is Arkansas going to make the NCAA tournament?
It's funny because just before I answer the question, most of my law school classmates don't know anything about like my Twitter stuff. There's like a handful that do. So like my actual 3L classmates, but apparently the entire class below me, the 2L class, like knows who I am. It's like, oh, do you know he's in law school with us? I thought that was funny. And then some people don't recognize or differentiate JC from Jackson Collier. But as far as tournament, yeah, they're a lock for the NCAA tournament at this point. They're still getting help from teams losing. So right now, I would have them pegged as an 8 seed. You're still having teams all around that 7 to 10/11 line, all losing, dropping games. Granted, Arkansas lost on the road at Tennessee. It was a quad 1A loss. So not the worst thing in the world, even though it was over 15 points and Arkansas didn't play well. Their net and all their metrics still remained pretty high. I think they didn't drop any. I don't think they dropped anywhere as a result of that loss. They dropped in the net one spot today, but I think that's just someone else moving up ahead of them. So they're 15 in the net now, which is still really good. Yeah, they're definitely a lock for the NCAA tournament. They're on the 8 line right now. A win against Kentucky, we'll see if that would bump them back up to a 7. It really just depends on some other teams too. I thought Arkansas was really going to struggle to get back on the 7 line, unless they beat Kentucky and won a couple in the SEC tournament. But potentially just winning against Kentucky and winning opening round of the SEC tournament could put them on the 7 line because so many teams are losing right now. I'll have updated bracketology out Monday, and I'll do a deep dive and scrub my bracket and everything Sunday. So I'll have a more in-depth answer. But right now, yeah, definitely on the 8-9 line, probably one of the top 8 seeds, and definitely going to make the NCAA tournament.
Even if they lose to Kentucky and lose the first game in the NCAA or the SEC tournament to maybe a bad team. Like I don't know exactly what the SEC tournament bracket looks like right now, but say they lose to Kentucky and then they have like maybe a quad 2 or quad 3 loss to start the SEC tournament, they still make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, they'll still make the NCAA tournament. This team is so weird. It is really like a Jekyll and Hyde situation. Like you said, you can go and almost beat number 2 on the road. Then you go on the road to Tennessee and just really fall flat on your face. I kind of attribute it to like there are a lot of factors. They just didn't play well, but it was a short turnaround and 2 back-to-back road games. So Saturday you're in Tuscaloosa, and then you don't even have a Wednesday game. You're Tuesday in Knoxville. That is a short turnaround. I know there were some issues with the landing of their plane, I guess, was that Monday? They had to like hold off landing and circle around for a while and stuff because of weather. Not to say these are any direct reasons why they played so bad, but I mean I guess it kind of goes into it.
I did see somebody replied to Andrew Hutchinson's tweet. I guess it was a story that he tweeted out, and this dude was like, "Well, I would have lost a basketball game too if I almost died while landing my plane the day before." So maybe that dude is just overreacting, or maybe like he has a little bit of a inside information of like these dudes were shell shocked from almost dying in the plane landing. I don't know. That's just, do not take that as factual information because I'm not saying it is. Okay, so now that we got all that stuff out of the way, you made people feel better about the NCAA tournament thing. We got to talk about this Kentucky game. Before we do, I want to remind you about Bet Saracen. We went 0-2 on our Bet Saracen picks for the Tennessee game, which is unfortunate because we're on the road to 500. I don't know, man. If Arkansas only has like a few more games here, we might not make it to 500 by the end of the season. I think we were 4 games back, and then now, or not, I guess 4 bets back. So we were 13-17. Now we're 13-19 because of the Tennessee game. So that's unfortunate. Anyways, Bet Saracen, the mobile sports gambling app of the Saracen Casino Resort. You can get it on the Google Play Store or the App Store. They have a ton of great stuff over there. It's great for, Arkansas specific stuff. So like people listening to this podcast, likely Arkansas Razorback fans. So if you go on Bet Saracen, you can get the player props, everything that you want for Arkansas games, but you can also get the special bets. So they always have like cool little bets where it's like Mekhi Mitchell, Mikael Mitchell, Jordan Walsh combined 30 rebounds in a game. You can get stuff like that. The Arkansas specific specials, they create special bets just for Arkansas games, and you can only get that on Bet Saracen. You can't get it anywhere else, and you have to be in the state of Arkansas to bet. So go over to Bet Saracen, get all that cool stuff. Of course, you can get specials and bets and player props on all other games and all other sports, including like NASCAR, F1, rugby, table tennis, a lot of really interesting stuff. But I ask that you be a responsible gambler, and if you have a problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, because if you're betting at like 3 a.m., then you might have a problem. So make sure you don't have a problem and call 1-800-GAMBLER if you do. Bet Saracen, thank you to Bet Saracen for sponsoring our podcast. We also do the Bet Saracen player prop specials, odds, lines, all that stuff story every week, and we give our picks. As I mentioned, 0-2 against Tennessee, but who would have guessed that Nick Smith Jr. was only going to score 12 points? Because I wouldn't have guessed that, to be quite honest with you. All right, let's move on to this Kentucky game, Jackson. So the Wildcats, they're not going to have Severe Wheeler. He's supposed to be out for a few weeks. So that's one thing. They didn't have him the first time around against Arkansas, right? I'm pretty sure.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah. So he didn't play the first time against Arkansas. So as far as Arkansas Kentucky goes, that's no change this season. But they might not have Case and Wallace, who is really good. Had a good game against Arkansas the first time around. That would be tough for Kentucky if you, one, don't have Wheeler, who, a veteran guy, but two, you don't have, your star freshman in Case and Wallace. That would be tough for Kentucky. It would benefit Arkansas, of course. It's unfortunate for Kentucky. It would benefit Arkansas, but how are you looking at this matchup right now? Because Kentucky just lost to Vanderbilt.
So before the Vanderbilt game, I thought Kentucky was playing better than probably 95% of the teams in the country there. I mean, they were really on a hot streak, and then just kind of came tumbling down against Vanderbilt. I mean, not to say that that's all for naught. They were pushing for a 5-6 seed in the NCAA tournament. Really playing well, have a strong resume and pretty good metrics and all that sort of stuff. And then you lose against Vanderbilt, who, Vanderbilt didn't even have their star center, Liam Robbins, for most of the game. I think he only played 4 minutes, scored 2 points, and Kentucky still lost. So, looking at the matchup between Arkansas and Kentucky, they don't have Severe Wheeler, potentially no Case and Wallace. I don't know where their offense is going to come from without those two guys. Like, I don't know who's going to be that point guard that's going to try to create on the offense. Obviously, they have playmakers, guys who can hit shots, guys who can finish down low, but I don't look at their roster outside of Wheeler and Wallace and point to. I can't point to somebody who's like, oh yeah, he's going to step up and he'll be able to create for people. I just don't know where that's going to come from. So, maybe there's someone. Maybe I'm overlooking someone. Maybe I don't know the Kentucky roster all that well, which I probably don't. But Jacob Toppin is a forward. He's not that guy. They have some shooters in Frederick and stuff, and obviously Oscar down low, but I just don't see anybody that's going to be that driving force. So it'll be interesting to see what their offensive philosophy is if they don't have Wallace. It'll be interesting to see how Arkansas defends them, because you would think it would be at that point an all-out effort to stop Sheboy, because I think he had a big game against Vanderbilt, even though they lost. But you also don't want to you want to try not to let him get into his rhythm and all that sort of stuff. And, Arkansas, again, is one of the better perimeter defensive teams this season as far as defending the three-point shot. So probably contain the three-point shot again, try to minimize Oscar's impact and, go from there on the backcourt. But like I said, I don't know where the offense is going to start from.
Yeah, so Wallace scored 24 the first time around against Arkansas. He made 10 shots from the field. So that was big for Kentucky. of course, they lost the game, but I'm looking. So Antonio Reeves and CJ Frederick were like two of the guys that they really turned to against Vanderbilt. Frederick didn't score at all against Arkansas in almost 21 minutes the first time around. Reeves had 11 points, missed 8 shots. So, I think that would benefit Arkansas if they have to, go to those guys and rely on them offensively. But I want to read a quote from Calipari from after the Vanderbilt game about Cason Wallace. He said, first of all, Cason, they x-rayed. He's fine. It's not swelled. We'll see. I'm hoping he'll be okay for Saturday, but I don't know. And if not, we've got to figure out how we do it against pressure. So the quote on Wheeler is, my guess right now and what doctors told me, it's going to be a couple of weeks. So he's probably not going to play. So obviously we have Severe out. We can't have Kaysen out too. That gets a little iffy. We just got to get back healthy. That's what Jacob Toppin said. So, I think that Kentucky as a whole understands, like, you need to have Kaysen Wallace back for this game. If you don't, you probably don't have much of a chance. Even if you do have him, it's going to be tough to beat Arkansas in Bud Walton Arena, which, I mean, from an Arkansas perspective, I would assume that this team is going to be playing with a can't lose mentality, right? Arkansas.
You would really hope so. Their backs aren't necessarily against the wall, but it's your final home game. You just lost back-to-back tough games, got blown out in the most recent one, and you want to have some momentum going into the postseason. There's going to be a whiteout in Bud Walton Arena, playing against Kentucky, which is a pretty big rival as far as basketball goes. Arkansas fans hate Kentucky. They already beat them on the road. I mean, Musselman has had the upper hand on Calipari since he's been at Arkansas. So all these factors going in, you would really hope and you'd really think that Arkansas would play their best game to close out the year. We'll see what happens. I'm leaning more towards, and I tweeted this out too. There are two ways really to respond after you just get dominated for 40 minutes. And you can either roll over and wallow in it, or you can just, pick yourself up and, respond to the adversity. So we'll see what the mental fortitude of this team is on Saturday, if they're going to respond or if they're going to kind of roll over. I tend to think and kind of hope that they pick themselves up and finish strong. I think they obviously have the talent to do it. They have one of the most talented rosters still in the SEC. So we'll see what happens.
All right, I have a couple questions for you about specific things, and then we'll get people on their way. First of all, this was from the post-game press conference after the Tennessee game, and there was a question presented to Ricky Council. Basically, what's the message in the locker room? What is the mindset right now? And he responded with no comment. Is that a little weird to you? Or do you think that he's just kind of like, that's, I'm going to keep that within the team and not really get into that? Like, I felt like it was weird in the moment.
Yeah, there are different schools of thought. I mean, some players will just give you the typical, like, I guess coach speak kind of answer, like, oh, well, the message to the locker room is we got to pick our heads up, we got to play hard, finish strong this season, all that sort of stuff. And it's kind of the same as a non-answer, because that's kind of just what you're expected to say, what you're supposed to say. It's the right thing to say. But saying no comment, I don't necessarily think of it as something that's a glaring, like, mark or anything. I guess it is kind of weird to say that, but I'm not gonna dive into it too much. I think probably after getting beat by 18 points too, you just don't want to talk about it. I mean, just honestly, like, oh, hey, you just got beat by 18. What's the message in the locker room with the team? Like, no comment. Like, I can understand that being it too.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I agree with you there. I would assume that it was just a, like, I don't really want to talk about it. He's probably just wants to forget about the game, move on from it. It was kind of the same, attitude, I guess, we got from Nick Smith Jr. after the Alabama game. Like, he wasn't happy. They wanted to win that game, and so you can't really, I get it. I agree with you. Second question. Has Anthony Black hit the freshman wall? Is there a freshman wall? There's a freshman wall in baseball for sure. Is there a freshman wall in basketball? Because the past 2 games have been tough for Anthony. Got in foul trouble early against Alabama. Tied a season high 6 turnovers against Tennessee. Now, we talked about how good Tennessee's defense is, but it seems like Anthony, his past 2 games specifically, he's looked a little, different. You haven't seen the guy that you're like, this guy is a 100% first round pick. Like, this dude's a lottery pick. And now, I mean, like, he's still going to be a first round pick. Absolutely. But now you have people who are like, he should come back for another year. He could use another year in college. So, has he hit the freshman wall, or do you think it was just like 2 tough road games against, good defensive teams?
Man, seeing those comments on Twitter after the game, there was a lot on Twitter, some even on our message board at the Trough. And, oh, well, all these guys need to come back for another year. Like, oh, Nick Smith isn't a lottery pick, or Anthony Black obviously isn't a first round draft. Like, there are a ton of those types of comments, and I didn't put any stock or weight into them because it was just kind of laughable to me. Because they're Anthony Black and Nick Smith both are obviously going to be first round draft picks. There's no question about that. As far as the freshman wall goes, I don't really think that there is necessarily quote unquote a freshman wall. Like, I don't think that's like a regular occurrence. I mean, everybody has up and down games. I think these are just 2 back-to-back games where Anthony Black has struggled a little bit against Alabama, got in foul trouble early. I think he struggled to get into a rhythm. He wasn't able to, kind of be in there for an extended period of time at the onset of the game. So then when he gets put back in the second half, everybody else is already adjusted to the officials. Everybody's adjusted to the speed, the physicality, and he's just kind of sitting there still playing off of his 2 or 3 minutes from the first half. So he hadn't fully acclimated yet. So hard to kind of adjust to all that. So I think he just never found a rhythm against Alabama. Tennessee, I just think it was, another issue of it's a tough road game against a really good defense, and he just didn't play well. And I think that is fair to say, and I think it's also fair to say that I don't expect him to necessarily have that type of performance every time they go out the rest of the year. I think obviously he's a first round draft pick, like we've already said, potential lottery pick. And with his size, the way he's played all year, I don't think 2 games where he struggled should overshadow how well he has played the entire season. I think some fans in particular are prisoners of the moment and to recency bias type of stuff, all that mumbo jumbo. But I think, he could finish out the year very strong. I don't think he's hit a wall per se. I don't think he's played his best basketball at Arkansas yet. He's played a full, really good season, just struggled the last 2. But I think he can close strong against Kentucky and help Arkansas in the postseason.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, he's going to be a first round draft pick. It does feel like he hasn't hit his full potential. I think the only time that you could say like this is the Anthony Black that is the 5-star guy who's going to be a lottery pick, Maui. Like that Maui Anthony Black was so much fun to watch. And it was so early in the season that you're like, holy crap, what is it? What are you going to get from this dude the rest of the year? Now, of course, you've only seen like glimpses of that a couple of times since, but if they could get Maui Anthony Black in the NCAA tournament, ooh, with a healthy Nick Smith Jr., that would be fun to watch. So, I want to ask about like who's going to be on the team next year, who's on the team this year, but I feel like we should save that for like our postseason episode because that's probably like the most common question we get is like, who's coming back? Who's getting drafted? Like, what's the percentage of this guy coming back? I mean, I guess now that I mentioned it, we should probably talk about it a little bit,
We can touch on it a little bit. Yeah, that's probably number 1 in all of my DMs and stuff. Like, oh, is so and so coming back? Is so and so coming back? And a lot of them I just ignore. Some of them I answer. But you look at a few different guys. I mean, obviously, we don't expect Nick Smith or Anthony Black back. So that's 2 that are gone. Kamani Johnson will be out of eligibility. So that's 3. Okay, so you got 10 other spots on roster. And Just going down the list, I kind of expect Devo back more off, or I more so than not. Honestly, I think he would more than likely come back. He's playing really well, but I don't know if his playing style, even with developing a perimeter jump shot like he's proven this season, I don't know if he's necessarily ready to take the NBA jump yet. I think he needs to work a little bit more on ball handling and all that sort of stuff, because he would be a point guard in the NBA. So you can't, with his size, you can't play on the 2 or the 3 unless you're a really knockdown shooter. So I'd expect Devo back. Twins kind of up in the air, mainly just because they've been in college a long time. So never know with those kind of guys. I expect at least 2, maybe all 3 of the other freshmen, Barry Dunning, Joseph Pinion, and Darian Ford, who haven't gotten as much run as the other 3. I would expect at least 2, if not all 3 of them to come back. Jordan Walsh is kind of up in the air too. I think the way that he's played this season, he's shown enough potential to be drafted, probably not in the first round, but he's also shown that he's raw enough that he could really benefit from a second season. Trevin Brazil is another interesting name to look at. I would lean towards him coming back because he was playing himself into a first round draft pick, and then got hurt. And the biggest issue with coming off of an ACL injury is that, it's risk. You don't know if a guy's going to come back the way he was before, the athleticism, which is one of his selling points, the explosiveness, all that sort of stuff. So he can bet on himself and go and probably still be a second round draft pick or an undrafted free agent. And then, bet on himself and play into a roster spot, or he can come back and try to get back into that first round range. And then while he's in college, you still utilize NIL since it's legal now. Trying to think of it. Jalen Graham, who knows? Up in the air there too. He has eligibility left. Everybody has eligibility except for Kamani Johnson. Who am I forgetting anybody?
Not sure. I mean, like, did you hit Ford and Pinion and Dunning?
Yeah, I said I think at least 2, if not all 3, would be back, I would imagine.
Okay. Then yeah, I mean, those are honestly like the bigger, like
Ricky Council. I didn't touch on Ricky Council. He's an interesting one because I think as far as a basketball player goes, he's probably maxed out his potential, but he does have another year of eligibility left. So it's kind of in balls in his court, so to speak, but I would kind of expect him to move on. I think that's good. I think that's where I'm at right now.
All right. Well, that is that's good. Well, and I think that we'll feel better about those situations, after the season, figure out how things end up. So we're going to leave it there. Before we go, though, want to remind you about our friends at myperfectfranchise.net. Are you a displaced corporate executive or wanting to put your career in your own hands? Or are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? Well, Andy Luedecke can help. He's a longtime Rivals member and franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. He uses that expertise to help others find their American dream through a very thorough and free consultation process. Call Andy. Put your life and career in your own hands. It's 100% free, so what do you have to lose? His number is 404-973-9901, or you can visit myperfectfranchise.net for more details today. All right, Arkansas, Kentucky, 1 p.m. Central Time, Bud Walton Arena on Saturday. It's going to be a big game. It'll be on CBS. We'll be there for HawgBeat.com, HawgBeat.com, providing you with live updates, detailed stats, everything you need on Arkansas, Kentucky. And make sure you go to HawgBeat.com, subscribe, get all that information, and we'll talk to everybody next week on the Hardwood Hawgs Podcast.